Hello, I'm going to talk about in Unit 4 the Mesozoic and Cenozoic eras. A lot of things do happen in this time period, but we're going to kind of speed through some things here in order to get to actual evolution. So I have this broken down into 5 parts, the Triassic, Jurassic, Mesozoic, Paleogene, and Neogene periods. So, ugh, excuse me, asthma's bad. The cottonwood is getting to me. So we're going to start with the Mesozoic. Meso means middle, so it's the middle era. This is the age of reptiles. We're going to see our infamous Pangea. We're going to see conifers, dinosaurs, birds, and finally mammals and some flowering plants. So a lot of things happen during this time. So here is the early Triassic period, and we can see here as those continents are starting to, as they are pretty much all in one area. I always find it interesting to see where different places are, continents at different periods of Earth's history. Some major biological events would be gymnosperms. Gymnosperms are naked seed plants, so we'll get to that, and dinosaurs and us, mammals. So we can see some of the weird organisms during this time period. So plants. So we finally have what we call gymnosperms. Gymnosperms are the first plants to have seeds. So they have a vascular system, so they have xylem and phloem, but they also reproduce by seeds. Seeds allow them to live in environments that are not moist. The seeds allow those, we all know what seeds are, but it allows for those baby plants to sit dormant for many years until the right conditions in which they grow. We call them naked seeds because they're not protected by a fruit, and we'll get to fruits a little bit later. So instead of spores, we have seeds. All right. So again, we're now opening up the habitat for many different environments that aren't, in a tropical type or real moist environment. This particular group of plants dominated the earth for many, many, many years. So some of their adaptations that allowed them to do so well on land was their woody growth. So they were able to have, we talk about trees, right? So we can get taller and bigger. Modified leaves, those modified leaves, what they do is they allow for more surface area to volume. So they don't lose water so easily. And you guys are familiar with needles. So needles are just modified leaves. And then those needles are covered in a waxy coat. All right. Roots are also more developed, and so they allow for better transportation of water. And of course, we talked about the seeds. So we have that baby plant packed with basically food that will allow it to sit dormant, and then when the conditions are right, it will germinate or start to grow. Now, those plants need sugar when they first start to grow because their leaves are not working at first, right? They have to send those up and then develop leaves in order to start making their own food. We also have dinosaurs. A lot of people think they're just big reptiles, but they are not. Yes, they come from a reptile-like ancestor, but they have some significant anatomical differences. And in this picture, I love this picture because it shows so many of those significant differences. Like here we have this hole between the eye socket and the nose. We also have 2 holes behind the eye socket, so we can see those here. And then we also have the ankle that bends like a hinge. And the hips. The hips are going to be the most significant thing now and noticeable difference between dinosaurs and reptiles. And we'll see that in the next slide. And then we also have some more bones towards the sacral region of the vertebrae. So this is going to show you the difference between reptiles and dinosaurs. So reptiles, notice how their legs are kind of stuck out. And so when they do that, when they're stuck out like that, they kind of waddle when they walk and their bellies are close to the ground. versus the dinosaurs, their hips are more, allow their legs to be tucked up under them to get their bellies up and allow for better mobility. So that's one of the biggest differences between reptiles and dinosaurs. And then we're going to start going into the origin of mammals, with the goal being the last unit talking about human evolution. So there were two different types of amniotes. Remember, amniotes are organisms that have eggs that will allow them to lay them not in water. We have the diapsids and the therapsids. And then from there, we're going to kind of break off based on other anatomical differences. So we have our therapsids, and we can see how we kind of branch here. And then we finally get to the cynodonts versus the Therocephalia. And then the cynodonts will then break them in two. That's going to be our common ancestor to mammals. Again, and when we go through this history of evolution, there are a lot of dead ends to this evolutionary tree. Some just go extinct. They don't have the right traits to survive, and they don't survive. And so we do have some, we're going to prune some of these branches on our evolutionary tree. So here's another picture of this. This is a cladogram. I'll talk a little bit more about cladograms as we get into actual evolution, like the technical evolution stuff. So we have our vertebrates. So what we're saying is that all these organisms have vertebrae. We then go from our fish to our tetrapods, tetra meaning four limbs. We're then going to split up into the, I guess you could call it the non-amniotes. So the amphibians, as you know, they have to lay their eggs in water versus the amniotes. And then we're going to split it up into those two things, the synapsids and the diapsids. And then when we go from there, so we can see here our mammal-like reptiles and then us. And then we can see where we go from our archosaurs, which would be crocodiles, our dinosaurs, birds, and then we have this branch over here, the lepidosaurs, which are the tuatara, snakes, and lizards. Okay, so we can see kind of how that reptile tree breaks down. And then we're at the end of the Triassic. At the end of the Triassic period, and again, you keep noticing we have all these extinctions, all these extinction events. So we have another one. Death rate was 76%. The most likely cause was volcanoes. Hopefully you can see this trend. It's like volcanoes, volcanoes, volcanoes. Our planet is constantly changing, and that change is driven by plate tectonics. And so we keep coming back to that whole idea that as our planet changes, so does life. Life has to keep up. If it doesn't keep up, it dies. That continues to be this theme through evolution. And then we have the Jurassic period, which everybody's like, yay, dinosaurs, so thanks to Jurassic Park. Actually, if you have a chance, read the book. It is so much better. Books are always better than the movie, but it is better in that it gets into more of the science. It gets into some stuff they didn't talk about in the movie. So here is the early Triassic, and notice we now have Pangea. The gymnosperms during this period of time became more diverse, meaning that we had many more different species. They dominated the plant kingdom, and dinosaurs dominated the animal kingdom. So, like I said, most of your favorite dinosaurs are from this time period. My kids grew up watching The Land Before Time, and honestly, I think Petrie was my favorite. So, don't know which one was yours. It was Littlefoot. I like Petrie. Mammals continue to thrive underground to evade predation. So again, the mammals are still there, but they were small, and they stayed in burrows, and they hid so they wouldn't get eaten by those mean old dinosaurs. And then here's a picture of many of those dinosaurs that you are so familiar with. I do like brontosauruses. Those are really kind of cool. Of course, the velociraptors are always scary. That was great in Jurassic Park. So the plants in this time period, we can see all kinds of different types of things. This one here, this is the Ginkgo phyta. It has been alive since this time period. It is very, very, very old. It is the only plant. It's the only plant in that particular genus. It is really, really pretty. They have these little fan-like leaves that turn a pretty yellow in the fall. You do not want a female Ginkgo fida tree. They produce these little types of fruits, which is kind of like an early fruit because it's not technically a fruit yet. And they stink. They really smell. And then we have like these here that are called horsetails. If you actually go out to Glacier Park, there's a lot of horsetails out there. We have our cycads here and all kinds of different types of plants. So, like I said, some are still here today. Some in these different groups in the gymnosperm family. Then we get into the Cretaceous period. So we can see how the continents are breaking apart, and it's looking a lot more familiar to today's positions of our continents. The gymnosperm diversity, some of the Cretaceous trees, we've got our maple and our beech and our oak trees that we're all so familiar with. So we went from a lot of trees that looked like what we call evergreens. Evergreens are trees that they're gymnosperms that do not lose their leaves during the winter. They have adaptations to survive through the winter. Now we're getting more into what are called deciduous trees. Deciduous trees lose their leaves in the winter time. In the winter, I always say, oh, the trees are naked. Okay, so we have many of those around here. And as you know, we just got done with the helicopters and all that from the maples, and then we'll have acorns from the oak. So we see those seeds, right? And as I'm dying from the cottonwood, another type of seed from a gymnosperm. Okay. So plants, we now have what are called angiosperms. Angiosperms are protected seeds. These are our flowering plants. The seeds are protected by what's called an ovary, or you call a fruit. So like when you're eating an apple, you are eating a plant ovary, and the seeds, right, are inside of it. Right, so where the sperms were naked seeds, the angiosperms are protected. They are protected in a developed ovary. The end of the Mesozoic era is probably one of the most famous extinctions. And this is, everybody wants to know, why did the dinosaurs die? Well, there were many, many different ideas, but so far the evidence is pretty I don't say conclusive, but it really points to this particular event. Now, whether that event happened by itself or it was multiple events that happened within the same time frame. And again, when we talk about time frames, we're talking thousands of years here, not just a day or two or even a year. So there was a lot of suspect that a meteor had hit, a good-sized meteor had hit the planet and caused the death of the dinosaurs. Okay, so I wanted to make sure I didn't have some. So, earth scientists have actually found a layer in the sedimentary rock of iridium, and iridium is a material that we see from meteors. So we knew around this extinction event that some kind of meteor hit, but again, to have this type of mass extinction, the size of the meteor had to be pretty remarkable. And scientists were like, well, then where's the crater? Well, as they were developing sonar and they started using sonar to map the floor of the ocean in the Gulf of Mexico, they found a crater. Okay, so in the Gulf of Mexico, there is a big crater. It is underwater. It's in the Yucatan Peninsula. And it supported the theory that the dinosaurs most likely died from the meteor. Although there were other things that also possibly, they're saying, oh, well, we also had some volcanoes erupt at the same time. So it just could have been a plethora of things that all happened in the same time frame that, doomed those dinosaurs. And so I kind of have this up. We've been talking about these mass extinctions. So I thought, you know what, let's look at them all. So we talked about the Ordovician, and again, we're talking about this was rapid global cooling. So I mean, there were some environmental changes, But a lot of these environmental changes, again, were from volcanoes. We have the Devonian, we talked about, again, maybe an asteroid, global cooling. Permian, huge amount of volcanic activity. Triassic, we talk about, again, global warming, probably volcanoes. And then we have the KT death rate. The KT, that's the boundary between the Cretaceous and the Triassic. And so I don't know why they use a K. I honestly don't. I think I looked it up at one time and I don't remember if I found an answer or not. But the KT boundary, that's where they found that layer of iridium. And like I said, we think most likely it is asteroid, but we also have some proof that their volcanic activity also was increased. So there's just a lot of different theories, but most likely it was the asteroid. That was the major cause of that extinction. Okay. And then we have the Paleogene period. So the Paleogene period, that you can see again, we don't quite have that land bridge there. Many of you may not have realized that North America and South America were not connected. It wasn't until that land bridge filled in and it actually allowed the possums to migrate up once that land bridge was formed. Okay. So it may appear I have some technical difficulty. I think this slide, I was wondering why, because I thought this was just A, B, and C. So I think this slide starts the next group of lessons, and I just accidentally left it in there. So we will pick up on this with the next video. All right, thank you. I'll see you in the next one.